Well, listen, thank you so much for coming back to us today. We are live on WCEG Talk Radio Network. You can catch us on Facebook. You can catch us on Instagram, YouTube. We're all across the country on WCEG Talk Radio. The views and opinions of this show, whatever is said today, are those of myself and nobody else. So if you know how it is, if you don't like it, then you can contact me and we'll discuss it, but I want our guest to be free to say whatever he feels to be said. He's a great man of God, and I'm honored that he would take his time out of his busy schedule to be with us. Let's welcome back my co-host first, Dr. Willis Smith. Welcome back, my brother.
God bless you, man. Glad to be back.
Good to be back. That's right. Bishop Tico Manuel down in Monroe, Georgia. How are you, sir?
God bless you, sir. It's so awesome to be here with you on today.
Thank you, sir. And then the woman of the bunch. She thinks she's the boss of all of us. You know that song, You're Not the Boss of Me. Let's welcome back Bishop Dr. Judy Peterson. How are you, Judy Anderson? I always get, Judy Peterson is a singer because I always
No, we're not prophesying. Good evening, gentlemen. I'm so glad to be with you.
Thank you so much. I want to get right to it because I know this man of God is busy. He took time out of his schedule. Thank you, Trudy, for connecting him, because calling him is like calling the White House. You get, to call the White House, you got to go from extension to extension to extension. But I want to welcome to our show. He's a writer. He's a minister, a wonderful scholar. He's an author. I got a couple of his books in front of me. He is known as the voice of the century across America, sought after speaker. He's none other than Dr. Michael Eric Dyson.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you, sir?
Good evening.
I'm fine. How are y'all?
Doing good, doing good. We want to get right to it. I know you have just a few minutes and you got to get off, but I want to hit a couple of topics as we look at everything, hear the news. Where does America go from here? I'm going to go right to the question that I was sent. Where do we go from here? As a people, where do we go? What's next?
Well, we continue to do what we've always been doing. What did we do before we had all this? DEI, affirmative action, no sign of reparation. What were we doing before? Did we exist? Did we think? Did we grow? Did we establish HBCUs? Did we make sororities and fraternities? In other words, most of the stuff we done did before we got what we now has been taken from us. So we have to go back to understanding what the traditions that have nurtured us are, and what the fulfilling aspirations we nurtured in our hearts were about. And so, as my pastor, Dr. Frederick George Sampson, used to tell me, we've already come through what we've come to, right? We've already come through what we've come to. We've been here before. And if we've been here before, that means we can get here again. Like David out there with the bears and the lions, and he's saying, look, because I done faced these bears and lions, I'm able to go on and do some other stuff. I can face this giant because I've already, in the name of God, faced some adversaries that have tried to destroy me. And so we know that this orange apparition that has beclouded the American political horizon is not the first threat to us as a people. And so we have to continue to raise our vision, deepen our determination, expand our understanding of who's on our side, and then rearm as we fight the enemy and our opponents.
So fear should not be a part of where we are today. You saying we should go and do what we've been doing. Don't stop doing what you've been doing, and you shouldn't be afraid.
Well, you can be scared. You can be scared. You can be afraid, because courage is not the absence of fear. It's acting even though you are afraid, even though you may be fearful. You don't allow that fear to have the loudest voice. You don't allow that fear to echo more broadly across the horizon of your life or in the chambers in which you listen to God. And so, yeah, it's daunting, it's intimidating, but that's what it's meant to be. This man is a bully. He means to bully you. He means to threaten you. He means to make you afraid. He means to make you believe that because some silly Negroes supported him, that this is the future of our political strata or our political outlook or our political commitments. No, So we have to recuperate what we've already done to get us to where we are. And remember that we've always been a vital, determined, courageous people. Yes, we were sometimes afraid, but despite that fear, we continue to move forward in the belief that God would help us.
All right. All right. Any co-hosts with a question? Question, anybody? Give you a chance. What y'all thinking? No co-host with a question? Okay. I got two of your books in front of me. Represent and Tears We Cannot Stop. Tears We Cannot Stop, page 120, actually page 125, which talks about being Black in America. Speak to that as we talk about what we're talking about. This one starts with the word nigger. What does it mean to be Black in America today?
Yeah, well, it means to still be called that word. It means to still be treated like that. It means that DEI is another way of calling us that. It means that we continue to struggle against odds and opposition, sometimes from within our own culture, community, and our race. As the great Zora Neale Hurston said, all my skin folk ain't my kinfolk. So just because you got black skin don't mean you ain't gonna show up at an inauguration, and you're not going to seek to entertain those who have tried to destroy, hurt, and harm you. And it also means we have to check ourselves. There are multiplicitous avenues into Blackness. So it's not as if there's one thing, liberal versus conservative, or left versus right, or, light skin versus dark skin, or rural versus urban. I mean, we all that and more. And it means then that we've got to understand the nuance, the sophistication of a complicated and complex Blackness that suggests that we do a lot of stuff and we're at a lot of places and spaces, and that we've got to embrace the multiplicity of our Blacknesses, the different ways in which we are Black, and we've got to figure out how to forge connection and establish coalition with those we don't think are necessarily in our community. Think about the LGBTQIA folk. Well, a lot of them are Black too. It ain't like we got to go outside and get some white who are gay. They all in our churches. Transgender people, we got to confront that stuff head on. We got to confront and check our own homophobia and transphobia, because here we are using the same playbook that white supremacists deployed against our vulnerable bodies to now turn around and diss somebody else, using the same book that was used against us, using a biblical literalism, which is another form of white supremacy, believing that every word that has been uttered, what about the mistakes that were made? What about the translation mistakes that were made? What about you, a human being, and you messed up and you thought it said do and it said do? So the point is, we still believe in the ultimate authority of the divinely inspired word. We still believe that God guides us. But if we imitating the very white people who damned, dogged, and hurt us, how are we escaping the theological traps and the homiletical caves that they have established to hibernate their white supremacy, while we're buying hook, line, and sinker the okey doke of their theology, while seeing them rise in worshiping whiteness more than they worship God? Martin Luther King Jr. said, sometimes I look at their churches and I wonder, who is their God? That's the kind of understanding, the nuanced, complicated, and complex understanding of Blackness that deals not only with gay and lesbian folk, but with women. The ways in which we still got some churches that don't want to have women preaching. Now, that's ludicrous in 2025, right? The Bible says if you don't say nothing, the rocks will cry out. So right. God can ordain an inanimate object, but not a woman. You ain't got no faith in God. Right. When you deny women the right to preach, that's your failure of faith in the ability of God to do whatever God wants to do.
Wow. Wow. I just got a question from one of my viewers asking me. She says, Bishop, ask him, where is the Black church and why is the Black church not talking?
The Black church is talking, but you ain't listening to the right one. If you looking at Instagram with theologies of leisure, theologies of luxury, speaking about intimate existential problems, and those are important, but none of those people are speaking about what you are confronting. How many of those Instagram black preachers on the internet, to be redundant, I sound like an old man, how many of them are talking about George Floyd? You got to get your prayer cloth right. You got to get your prayer life right. That's all true. Speak about the relationship between you saying God is the water of life, but you can't keep your water bill on. God is the light of the world, but you can't even keep your lights on. What is the relationship between politics and the Bible, between social justice and our theologies? So the black church is there. When I listen to a Freddie Haynes or an Al Sharpton or a Jesse Jackson or a Gina Stewart or an Alan Waller, when I think about Carolyn Knight, when I think about Vashti McKenzie, they out there, but it's like underground hip hop that is, quote, positive and uplifting versus the commercial stuff where you talking about boo boo, booty booty, and all that. So the thing is, it's there, but what are we choosing to listen to and underscore? What are we choosing to embrace in our theology? As Jesse Jackson said, we got Martin Luther King Jr. on the pictures and on the fans, and we got Billy Graham in the pulpit. A theology that undercuts and undermines who we are as a people. So they there, but you got to acknowledge the prophetic edge. And let's be real. The prophetic edge of social justice in the black church has always been a small group. It's always been a small margin. It ain't never been the majority of black folk in the church. So even though the majority of black people benefit from the struggles of the minoritized communities, the Martin Luther King Jr.'s and the Ralph Abernathy's and the like, all of us benefit, but very few of us do the work that is necessary to perpetuate a legacy of social justice and equality in America.
Wow, that's interesting. Question, anybody from a co-host? Any questions? No questions? Y'all mighty quiet today. Y'all mighty quiet today. Another question is, okay, she says Black history is not being taught like it was in the past. How can we change that?
Well, it's a good point. We got to fight these governors in these states, Ron DeSantis, against DEI, against Black history, because they don't want nobody to study history. They don't want nobody to know their history. They don't want nobody to know who we are as a people. They don't want us to understand that the beauty and the power of our, Black struggles should be acknowledged. And so they ban books, which means they're going to ban Black brains, which means they're going to ban Black mouths, which means they're going to ban Black bodies from participating in the larger pageant of American democracy. So for me, we got to insist that we, get on some of these school boards. All these Black folk who are in these local communities, get on the school board like the white folk doing. They act like they spit, all parents are white. No, they ain't. They act like the parents are have a trouble with reading Martin Luther King Jr. or Ruby Bridges. No, Black parents don't. So where are our voices? Let's get on these school boards. Let's begin to speak up in these local meetings. And then if you got a Black church with more than 2 people, if you got 3 folk in your Black church, you ought to have Saturday school. You ought to have the local teachers, the local doctors, the local lawyers, the local historians. Everybody got them. And I don't care how small your community is. Get those people in your church. It could be after school, and it could be on Saturday, or it could be both. But do what the other minorities do, Jews and folk who are Irish, some of them earlier on when they were coming into this country, Latinos and so on and so forth. Let's have freedom schools, Black schools, where we teach our kids the history that they're being denied in these institutions. But don't give up on the institutions, because that's your tax dollars too. So you got to stand up and be heard that, no, we want these books to be read. Even if you are outvoted, let them know you are there and present, and you do not represent who we are as a people.
So as a society, we got to get busy. We can't sit at home and complain and do nothing about it. We got to work.
Gonna change if you do.
Say that again?
Ain't nothing going to change if we do. That's
Right.
for darn sure.
Yeah, there's nothing going to change, and that's why we had to vote. You can't complain if you didn't vote. If you didn't vote, you can't complain. You didn't use your right. Let me ask you a question, kind of a personal question, Michael. We know each other from Detroit years back, and you have grown to be such a great voice. where's the passion from? Where's the passion come from?
Well, we ain't gonna tell all we used to do when we hung out at Tabernacle.
That's
Before you was a big time bishop, before you were now a prominent African American, before you was that, and before I was doing what I was doing, we were hanging out. Although we did go to the choir practice and we did go
did.
to Bible study, and we certainly went to the early morning dawn seekers,
Yes,
and
sir.
we hung out. And this good bishop here, he's chocolate charming and handsome, but he's a little bit older than he looks. He looked like he about 25, 26, y'all. He a little bit older than that. See that good black don't crack. The yellow is mellow, but it ain't that chocolate and that brown, right? That you don't even know what that man's age is, right? He look good for 85, don't he? He look.
I don't tell it.
Right? But the point is, we came up in a tradition. We came up in a powerful and extraordinary time where we had leaders like the Reverend Dr. Frederick George Sampson III. He saw greatness in Bishop Keith. He saw greatness in Lance Watson. He saw, talent and ability in a person like me. So when you have those who are encouraging you, you have an extraordinary basis and a powerful platform to really begin to shake up the status quo and to argue for the consciousness of those who are, marginalized, those who are dissed, those who are put to the back of the bus, so to speak, and those who are not acknowledged as crucial participants in American society. And so that continues to give us inspiration and to give us the mindset to do what we do. But I want to make sure I answered your question, though. What was the particular question?
Where did passion come from?
And the passion for me, of course, came from on the west side of Detroit. I couldn't hang out with the east siders, man. I don't know. So,
Right.
they made me believe in God on the east side. Like, there must be a God. Okay. But so the thing is, when we were coming up, think about it. I was 8 years old when the Urban Rebellion came in 1967. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the riots of Detroit. Then when Dr. King was murdered, I was 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Dr. Sampson came to the church, I was 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Then, I had Mr. Burdett in 7th grade, Mrs. James, who changed my life in 5th grade,
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Stewart, and so many more, Madame Black, my French teacher. These teachers, these preachers, these social activists, Kenneth Cockrell was using big words. I said, man, I'm gonna do that one day, because he's using big words and calling these people out of their names.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't gonna repeat
That's
what
right.
he said, and got away with it because he was brilliant and gifted and creative. That inspired our generations. And you were younger. I'm 66. I don't know how old you are now,
I
Bishop.
don't tell mine. That's right. I don't tell mine. I'll keep the 85. That's fine.
Y'all know he ain't no 85. So the thing is that, when we were coming up, it was extraordinarily beautiful in Detroit. The
Mm-hmm.
blackness that was palpable, the pride we took in who we are as a people, the extraordinary commitment of our teachers and professors and lawyers and doctors, and local activists to our futures and shaping us. And in Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, you had John Conyers, a congressman. You had Judge Damon Keith, a federal appeals court judge. You had Elliott Hall, a great lawyer, and Arthur Johnson at the Detroit Public Schools, and on and on and on. People that we saw. And then more broadly, we had Martha Jean the Queen, Irma Henderson. We had people who were councilwomen and people who were social activists and on the radio. And so, it was extraordinarily inspiring. And then we had, Reverend Charles Adams and Dr. C.L. Franklin. And so it was a beautiful, powerful time where we had the convergence of so much blackness that was inspiring to us. And that continues to inspire me.
Wow. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you being who you are. You've never changed. You've always been a man who acknowledged where you come from. You probably heard the same thing that Earlene Sampson said to me when I left Detroit at a certain age. She said, never forget the bridge that brought you over and you've never done that. So I
Bless you,
appreciate
my
you being
brother.
that same person.
This is
I know you.
Earlene Sampson. Look at you. You pulling out the big guns. You pulling out the big guns there.
She was a great woman of God. That was one sweet woman of God who stood next to a giant, and that was
Yeah, Dr.
she.
Sampson's wife, and
Yeah.
yeah, she was extraordinary. And Dr. Sampson, y'all ever get a chance to go hear him preach? Go look him up on the internet and look him up on YouTube because he was a great, great man, and she was a great woman. And the daughter of Earl Harrison, who was the great pastor of Shiloh in D.C. So that was a great family, bro.
So we were blessed to come up in that, and because of that, God allowed us to be where we are now. We never really we veered from it, got in trouble, whatever, but
Right,
came
right,
back to it. But
right,
now the society now, they don't have the same thing we had.
right,
We got to figure out how to give them the same advantage. As you
right,
named all those people that came, Daddy King, all those people
right.
that you and I had an opportunity to meet, greet, be around. But now it's not that way. So we got to really make sure that we really help our young people. And you do that as a professor. What else? You talked about hip hop. What you were really speaking on hip hop before, and you kind of got quiet with it. What happened to that era?
Well, no, I mean, I wrote a book on Jay-Z not long ago, a book on Nas's first album, a book on Tupac. So, you know, I try to let some of the young people say, what is this old Negro up here talking about hip hop? But I can still spit, y'all. So don't get it twisted now. You don't want to get into no hip hop, no MC battle with me, bro. But anyway,
Right.
so not you, I'm talking about to the young kids.
I
So
got you.
the thing is that hip hop is important, and it's so successful now, 50 years in, that we can afford. It used to be we couldn't really afford to criticize the public because then people take it and go, "Oh, see, we told you it's a bunch of trash." But we got to ask questions about people who show up at inaugural, parties, and you're supposed to be part of hip hop, and hip hop is at least irreverent in challenging the status quo and
Hmm.
arguing against some of the politics that prevail in the culture. You
Hmm.
know, like Jay said, even, all my teachers couldn't reach me, and my mama couldn't beat me hard enough to match the pain of my pop not seeing me. So, with that disdain in my membrane, got on my pimp game, blank the world, my defense came. Tupac said, just the other day, I got lynched by some crooked cops, and to this day, them same cops on the beat getting major pay. But when I get my check, they taking tax out, so we paying the cops to knock the blacks out. Or Talib Kweli, these cats drink champagne, toast death and pain like slaves on a ship, bragging about who got the flyest chain. So, or Lauren Hill, even after all my logic and my theory, I add a cuss word so you ignorant people hear me. So the point is that hip hop is powerful as a platform, but it's become so commercial and so successful that it sometimes replicates the very things that earlier hip hop stood against. So even though I appreciate, Drake and Kendrick, and even though they had a beef that will die down someday, hip hop will still remain. What is it as an art form that it can do to transform our lives, to speak to our social, political, personal issues, our existential miseries, our spiritual crises, the word, because hip hop is the drum and the word joined together, the music and the word lyrics coming together. So, what can we do to deploy this art form to continually challenge ourselves, to lift up our vision, and make certain that we are reflecting upon the greatest, forces in the culture that we try to channel through hip hop, a sense of memory about the past, an appreciation for the political struggles of our ancestors, and the ways in which we have to struggle against poverty and inequity and racism and white supremacy in order to become the best we can become as human beings.
Wow. Wow. Last opportunity, co-host. Got any questions, any comments? We're going to let him go in just a minute. I want to find out how people can connect with him. Any co-hosts? You got my co-host speechless. I don't understand.
I mean, we
They're
can
not.
stay off another 10 minutes if you want me to, Doc. I don't know what your schedule is, but I'm here. Uh, you
He's
know,
giving us he's giving us more time, y'all. Come on.
yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
Smith,
yeah.
you muted. You muted, Dr. Smith. I can't hear you. He can't get off mute. He's coming in just a moment. Bishop Judy, you off mute? You have something to say?
Well, I've been listening, and I've been listening purposely. Um, I have listened to what this good man of God is saying, and there are things I agree with and things I disagree with that is too long or too short to really debate today. But I would like to ask you a question.
You got to give me a
Um,
sense of is it sexuality? Is it politics? Is it blackness? Is it gender? You got to give me a sense. You got to give me a sense so we can talk it out a little bit.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is and I hear you mention the church, and I believe in marketplace prophets and apostles. That's what they came as. Martin Luther King came as one of the greatest prophets in the earth, and the identification is him, and his intellectualism is his ability, but his voice came from God, and so that's why it still rings today. But and even when you
Did I
deal
say
with hip
something?
hop,
Did I contradict that though about Dr. King?
no, 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 no,
Okay.
no, 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 no. That's why
Yeah.
I say what
Right.
I would have to really sit down, we would have to look face to face and go at it. And that would be fine. But
I'm just trying to get out what I said. I wanna, have
oh
a little
no,
argument.
we look, listen, don't worry about that. But listen, let me
Is
ask
it
you this.
biblical literalism? Is it the homosexuality? What is it? What is it? I'm just saying we got to
You
do
you
have
can
it out.
stay and hang, and I understand that. But I would like to say and really ask you a question, and it's something that I believe we have to look at as vessels of God on assignment in the earth. And
Mhm.
that is, when do we really infiltrate the enemy's camp? Because we have set it at certain places. If you see a table of wealth, we say we want a seat at the table. If we see, and we see these young men, young women coming up, and they are at ages we could never be successful at, multi-millionaires and billionaires now because of the hip hop generation and what they bring to the community. But God's assignment for the prophets and apostles to the marketplace has always been for Israel itself to infiltrate the enemy's camp. And we are still, to me, name throwing. If we see a Black come up and they go into an all-white community, then are we the judges of that? That we are still saying we're in slavery and you can't walk up in there because then you belong to the master. When you are sent by God to infiltrate the enemy's camp, because he told Israel, take the cities. You said some interesting things. You can't take the city without seats in the councils. And so when do we get behind them and push them and support them and say, go for it? Okay, because you are sitting there representing the African American community, but you are going to a heaven that represents all communities. And so, beloved, I see this. You have to know your assignment, be taught in your assignment, and be able to stand what is going to come when the enemy throws a dart at you. So my thing is as much as we are educating our community, I have no problem walking into a hip hop concert if that's what my taste is. But we are, to me, sending a double message many times that can dissuade what a young person would do because they don't want to be talked about. Okay, so I'd love to see you write a book on that.
Well, let me very provocative. The thing about look, let's take the present administration. There ain't nothing you gonna be able to do to infiltrate. You can infiltrate that. You become complicitous in the very structures of oppression. Pharaoh let my people go. So the point is that if you're dealing with somebody who is denying DEI, who is arguing against the necessity for equality and racial justice for those who have historically been locked out, there's one thing to infiltrate it because you got a message of transformation. But if you go in and infiltrate and you become complicitous in the very structure and logic that you were meant to oppose, you are joining with the enemy. You are
Okay, but
siding, right? That's what you're doing.
right, I
And
agree
Elijah,
with that, but I can't condemn them before they go to fulfill their assignment. To be
like,
complicit,
right.
to be complicit, because see, we holler in the church, the wealth of the wicked belong to the righteous.
Mhm.
Well, I got news for you. If you don't have no white folk, you ain't got no wealth. And they will show you how to get it. But if we don't put ourselves in that position where God can speak to us, He's still dreaming with dreamers. He's still sending us to infiltrate and be creative. We can't get the wealth if we never talk to the wealth.
Mhm.
Okay.
I
All right.
understand that, but I'll say this: not for the person who is directing the office, that the richest man in the world, who is a white supremacist, who gives a Nazi sign. I'm not infiltrating that. Envy
Yep.
not the ways of thy oppressors. So
Mhm.
I have no envy for the oppressive force of a rich person who is doing now unconscionable, anti-democratic. I don't mean Democrat versus Republican. I mean small d, anti-democratic democracy. A person who
Right.
is undermining the legitimacy of democracy uh, is to me a scourge that needs to be
Mhm.
identified. Number two, when it comes to, I know most of the black billionaires in this country, and
Mhm.
of course, they forge connection with the broader society. They would never deny that. But you can generate interest and capital within your own communities. And as Robert Smith did, go to Morehouse and say, I'm going to relieve the debt of
Mhm.
this graduating class,
Mhm.
$40 million.
Yes.
So
Yes.
he's not surrendering the integrity of his identity. In fact, he's generating that wealth out of the context of his consciousness as a black man and as a believer who understands what he must do in order to transform his society. So
His
I don't believe,
community. Yeah.
yeah.
And I
So
agree with that. I'm not disagreeing with that, but
mhm,
I know that when people listen to us and we have a platform, you got young people that can be listening to us.
mhm,
We can send, just like you said, look what he did. Now, if we hear his full story, he had, I guarantee you, that was in his heart before he ever made a dime. It sounds like a God dream that one day I'm going to pay off the debts
mhm,
of other people.
mhm.
Thank you,
Denzel
Bishop.
Washington does it. Denzel Washington did it, and he's still doing it.
Right.
Okay.
But
All
there's
right.
a plan to this. And that plan is the thing that motivates people. And what I'm saying to see, because I ran for mayor
Okay,
Mhm.
Bishop. I gotta cut
and
you.
I'm a preacher.
I gotta cut your time. I'm
Right.
running out of time
Let me
here.
just say
Okay.
one more thing, Bishop Kid. But the coonish acting person from Detroit who got up at the inaugural and made a minstrelsy of the prophetic character of Martin Luther King Jr. is
I
to
wish you
be
hadn't saw that. I hear you, and I don't disagree with you.
right. So
Believe
I'm
me.
saying, and
Yeah,
there are many
I
ways in
don't
which
know.
that occurs.
Yes.
Okay.
There are many
And
ways in
I
which that,
understand that.
and
Yes,
Thank
that's
you.
I
what
do.
happens when you Paula White, who pimps black religious tradition, style,
Mm-hmm.
and aesthetic to then
Mm-hmm.
say that if you are Black Lives Matter, that is from the devil. That is a white
Mm-hmm.
supremacist ethic. And as Martin Luther
Mm-hmm.
King Jr. said, when I go to their churches, I don't know who their God is. I am an atheist to that religion. I don't know your
I,
God.
I hear
I
you.
don't know
I
that
hear
belief
you.
and that tradition. And I'm just saying,
Mm-hmm.
for those young people who are listening, understand this orange apparition that has unleashed untold bigotry in American society by now establishing Paula White as the head of his religious effort. I say, if you're a black evangelical, you got to resist that. And you got to tell white evangelicals you're more white than religious. And if
Mm-hmm.
your mindset as a black person is you're going to replicate the theological animus toward blackness, you are self-hating in your own brain. And
Mm-hmm.
from your own mouth comes
Mm-hmm.
the authority to demonize you in a way that I don't think any God that we would ever worship would ever suggest.
Thank you,
Okay.
Doc. Any
Okay.
more calls? Got a question before Dr. Dyson goes? He's gave us
I
some.
do. I do. If I can get 1 minute, sir.
Go ahead. You got two.
All right. First of all, bless you, sir. First of all, as a 48-year-old Black man who's retired from the United States Army and now a pastor serving in the vineyard of the Lord, to even be on this channel with you, Dr. Dyson, is an absolute privilege. My question speaks though to the heart of pastoral ministry. Is it fair? And this is a question, I guess. Is it fair to lump in LGBTQ with inequalities for Blacks? Is that necessary from a biblical standpoint? Because that's where I have a divide. Now, I'm a firm believer in the love of all people because that's what Jesus did. Jesus would love hell completely out of you, whatever was wrong with you. But I think in our community, it appears, though, that we're saying that if you're going to be pro-Black, you also have to be pro-LGBTQ. Is that what you're stating when you talk about the injustices of the LGBTQ community?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. But this is what I mean even more broadly. I think that if either you stand for right or you stand for wrong. So it's beyond a racialized understanding or a gendered or a sexualized understanding. Although, you know, LGBTQIA folk, African-American, Latino people, women and the like. I mean, for so long, there were people who didn't believe women should talk. Bishop Anderson, Judy Anderson, couldn't even be on this call. She wouldn't even be allowed to speak to us because she doesn't have the authority if we're going to have a biblically literal interpretation, she is out of order right now. Now, I know that black side of Bishop Judy Anderson, well, yeah, I ain't even got to say no more. So the point is, you ain't shutting her up. And I don't get she gonna say there's another part of the Bible you clearly ain't reading. So my point is that most of those scriptures devoted even to notions of sexuality are about, you know, hosting people and being friends and friendly and hospitable to society. The word homosexual didn't get introduced into the Bible until 1946.
Understood.
Right. So my point is that no, LGBTQA can have their thing. African American people got their thing, except what about if you're Black and gay? What about if you're Black and trans? So you're fighting on the front of being a Black person, but you also happen to be gay or lesbian. And now you're facing from within your own family a powerful resistance to your humanity from your own people who use the Bible in the same way that white supremacists use it against Black people. You are cursed because you are the offspring of Ham. You are cursed because you are a Black person who looked upon this prophet, and on and on and on. As slaves obey your master, children obey your father, and so on. So the same, what they call house codes that are in Ephesians and Colossians are really patriarchal modes of expression that were integrated into the scripture. And when it was written, those inspired, biblically inspired figures also integrated some of that stuff into it as well. So Howard Thurman said, the great Howard Thurman, the prophetic mystic, said, my grandmama wouldn't even let me read from Paul because she knew Paul was trying to justify her inherent inferiority. So I'm saying at the end of the day, when we look at gay and lesbian and transgendered and bisexual people, some of whom are in our community, we have to understand that in the same way that white supremacists try to use biblical literalism to justify our subordination as Black people, we should be the least likely people to do the same thing to those gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual people. And if you say, well, the word said, they were quoting the word to you to justify your inferiority. So we have to be very careful. This is what I meant about a white supremacist mindset that allows us to interpret the Bible through the prism of a dominant white supremacist theology. Have we read James Cone? Have we read Gayrod Wilmore? Have we read Katie Cannon? Have we read Stacey Floyd Thomas? Have we read the people produced in our Black church who went to our churches and listened to our sermons, who grew up to become theologians and ethicists? We ain't listening to none of them. We still listen to John MacArthur or some white boy or girl who's interpreting the faith against the traditions of the very people you helped educate. And in that sense, I think we have to be extremely careful. We say, well, the word says, well, what word said it? Black people couldn't read for 90 years. So when we couldn't read for 90 years, what were we listening to? How could we be biblical literalists when we were forbade from reading?
Mm.
And when somebody read it to us, they were reading something we had to trust was the truth. But we said there's something deeper than even the word on that page. It's the word in my heart. It's the word of God, because God is still alive. If God is still alive, when you close that Bible, you have neither closed God's mouth nor God's mind. God continues to speak to the generations, to people, to Bishop Anderson, to Bishop Keith and the like, and to you, my brother. So my point is, we have to be far more, I think, cautious and skeptical and sophisticated about understanding what that word means, how it gets interpreted, and before we are willing to stand against those who are gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual. And here's a rule of thumb. If the people who hate me hate them, maybe I ought to at least take a look at them and think they might be on my side. Maybe.
And I absolutely agree with that, but I just don't want, for me, I just don't want there to appear to be a justification for being gay or homosexual. I just don't want it to feel.
Do you need to have a justification to be black?
No, sir, absolutely not.
That's
absolutely
my point.
Not.
Gay and
Yes,
lesbian people say the same thing to you. You say that would be like you saying, God forgives you for your sin of blackness. What? I'm black.
Yeah, that's not a
God
sin.
made me
Yes,
black.
sir.
I was born this way. Now, blackness is not merely a genetic code. It's not a biologically inheritable characteristic. It's a social construction. It's
absolutely
that too, psychology, but social, and so on. Gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual people say, I am a child of God. And how dare you tell me that this element of my existence that you isolate through your narrow biblical prism now becomes the basis for me having to justify myself. I don't have to justify myself. I am a child of God the way a black person is, the way a Latino person is, the way a short person is, the way a tall person is. These are incidental features of my existence that people have chosen to isolate. So, when Jesus preached that sermon against homosexuality, it was, I guess he didn't. So the point is that when we think about the traditions we come from, where are we getting the theology? Where is the insight being drawn from? How are we interpreting the word? How are we speaking about biblical literalism? How does that measure up against what we understand to be our evolved consciousness? When I was a child, I spake as a child. I thought as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. How can we evolve and mature and understand that our childhood beliefs in things have to change? And I'll tell you what, check out in the New York Times, I think it was today, my good friend, and it's a great honor to speak to you. Look, check out the New York Times today, where a white kid who came out to his father was a strict, conservative, white evangelical. And his father was like against all the gay thing. And then over the years, he began to wrestle with it and changed, still serving God. So don't even take my word for it. Take a guy whose son came out as gay. He didn't believe in it like you. He like, I don't believe in that justification or nothing having to do with sexuality. And he was able to struggle with that. I would recommend you would check that out. You still might disagree with it, but I think it provides at least an interesting point of departure to think about these issues.
Okay,
yes, sir.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Smith, thank you.
Yes,
Dr. You had a comment?
Well, I listen, and I listen for a reason. To learn, number one, is always my reason for listening. And I became a part of this show for one reason, and one reason only, and that is to make a spiritual impact on the people of God from a perspective that I believe God Himself, through the power of the Holy Spirit, will have people to know and understand. There are two types of understanding in our world system. That is the intellectual and the spiritual. I personally tend to lean more toward the spiritual. Not that I don't have not that I don't have the intellectual, because anybody knows me knows I have 7 college degrees, earned college degrees, 2 doctorates, 2 masters, 2 bachelors, and an associate with a host of other certificates and certifications in other areas, both worldly and theology. So when I talk, I talk from a perspective, for example, when we talk about Trump and what Trump is doing, my approach wouldn't be from a intellectual standpoint, even though those standpoints have merit. My point would be from a standpoint of biblical and prophetic reasoning. Number one, we very rarely hear the church talk about the New World Order. We very rarely hear the church talk about the one world government system. We very rarely hear them talk about those things that should happen at the end of the world. We are so busy trying to keep up with the world system that we forget this land is not our home. You hear very few people preparing to meet the bride, but we're talking about things that are on an intellectual level that can only enhance our intellectual ability. If we stay on that level, we miss the opportunity to get an equally significant understanding of spirituality. And spirituality conflicts to some degree with theology. I mean, I'm a theologian myself, period. I've been to seminary and all of the above. But when I talk from a perspective of a spiritual and biblical standpoint. So although I agree with the good doctor, and I don't dispute any of the points he made, there's a couple of them that I might have a little spiritual challenge with, but he's already addressed those. And so I accept his point with regards to the LGBT, whatever it is, situation. But I think my focus and my concern in this time and age of my life is not so much about what's going on intellectually, what's going on politically, but what is actually taking place behind the scenes. Because this world as we know it is going to end. Nothing that we see happening now with Trump or anybody else is not found on some level in biblical prophecy. It's all there, but it's not appealing. So because it's not appealing, we have no interest in it. And because we have no interest in it, it will create this thing where it doesn't matter to us. So, my conversation on here again is a little bit more in line with what I believe from a biblical spiritual standpoint.
Well, from a biblical spiritual standpoint, what's your response to Trump?
I don't have a response to Trump. Why should I respond to Trump?
Because your people are in a situation where they're being subject to, who in your church are living in a world where they have their lives impacted by these truths. What does the church say to them to inspire them, to keep them going? The questions that were asked of me. That's why the church ought to say something. Otherwise, it's completely irrelevant and has no meaning or significance in their lives. So what's the spiritual and, response to what they see going on?
Well, first of all, you can't give a spiritual response to a natural society because darkness and lightness, they don't comprehend each other. Now, back to what you were saying. What you're saying has been going on forever. It didn't end with the Obama administration. He's a black man, or to some degree, I guess. It didn't end with the first black president who was not Obama, because there was a black president before Obama. It's not going to end with Donald Trump. This world doesn't have an intellectual problem. This world doesn't have a natural problem. This world has a spiritual problem.
That's what I'm saying. What's the spiritual response? What's the spiritual response then? That's what I'm saying. I'm on your level. What is the spiritual response to him? What do you tell your people who say, Pastor, Bishop, what do I do? What's your response to them?
The response to them is that you be in the world, but you don't become the world. You understand everything that goes on, and you're not ignorant to the devil's devices. My people understand what the one world government system is. My people understand the concentration camps being built around the world as you and I speak. My people understand the part that the Bitcoin is playing and the subtle things that it does or that it's doing that the world doesn't want you to know about. My people understand what the mark of the beast is really all about. They understand that in Biloxi, Germany, there's a building that occupies 13 floors worth of computers that has the identity of every person's name in this world. They understand prophecy. So they don't get involved with getting sidetracked and worrying about what Donald Trump is doing. Because even the conversation that you and I have right now, we could not present a solution that would be taken seriously. So we can ask all the questions we want to, but do we have a solution that would be taken seriously? And
Well,
especially not with him.
this is what
Especially not with him.
But wait a minute. All the stuff you just mentioned ain't spiritual, Bitcoins and crypto and computers and with information, right? So that, and I agree with you that we have to pay attention to it. So I'm saying if that ain't spiritual, and this is why the black church says you Negroes have nothing for us. So you try to spiritualize it. You try to put it pie in the sky when I'm asking you a serious question. Wait a minute. Remember when they came to Jesus saying, asking him questions, right? Now, he would obviously, at some points, respond to them with another question, but he would say, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, unto God which is God's. But he had a response to the particular issue that they were raising. And I'm asking, what relevance does the church have if it can't tell its members who live? Like if your member says to you, Pastor, how do I think about Donald Trump's assault on DEI? What would you say to that?
Okay, I would say number one, it was supposed to happen. They knew it was going to happen a long time ago. But I would also say this to answer your question. I would say this is that while we are wasting time talking about the natural world, then the question that we really need to be answered is, if I die today, what happens to my spirit?
Okay, let's say we answer that. Let's say we answer that. We answer that.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm prayed up. I'm in with God. What do I do about DEI?
What should you do about DEI? DEI
Right.
has nothing to do with you and I, because it's not going to change because you and I feel bad about it. It's not going to change because we disagree with it. It's not going to change because a bunch of Negroes march on Washington, D.C. and say this is wrong. It's not going to change.
Pastor, let me ask you this question. Would it make a difference to Martin Luther King if they come in your church and kill you because you're a black man? Would it have an effect? Would it have an impact?
Wait, let's get this straight. Martin Luther King didn't get killed because he was a black man. Martin Luther King got killed, in my opinion, because he and JFK had locked into something that was going to change the economics of the black community. The white community did not want that to happen. They have forever been in power, and they always will be. We're focusing on the wrong thing, because you're going to leave this earth. At some point, you're going to leave this. Okay.
But I'm saying to you, if you are not even allowed, if under segregation, you weren't allowed to pursue your career, if Bishop Anderson or Bishop Keith or whoever, anything you want to do, that there was a limit on what you could do. If you simply said that's what God meant, you accepted white supremacy as the judgment of God, then you're turning God into a racist.
You don't accept white supremacy. White supremacy exists. Whether you accept it, whether I accept it, it exists. There's no such thing as whether or not you accept white supremacy or I accept white supremacy.
Wait a minute. So what happened with the 1963 with 64 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act? Because we have to accept the fact that we couldn't vote, but we changed it. We have to accept the fact
that
let me finish.
You're a very intelligent man.
Hold on. Let me finish.
Go ahead.
In 1964, when the Civil Rights Bill came forward, and before then, they couldn't get interstate transportation, couldn't get on buses with white folk. Remember the bus boycott in Montgomery? Before they accepted this is what it is, and you ain't gonna never change it. But they changed it. Then they changed in 64, the transportation networks, the ability of public housing, public facilities going into hotels, but it changed. 65, most of the masses of Negroes could not vote before 65, but after 65, they could vote. And in 68, the Fair Housing Act passed, where black people used to couldn't buy homes in certain areas, and then they could. So I'm saying literally there was a change. The laws changed, and therefore the behavior.
There wasn't a change, there was an allowance.
There was a change. No, there was a change in law that permitted people to do what they had to do, and permitted them to vote, and permitted them to stay in hotels, and change the housing. So I'm saying to you, because they didn't accept it, because they didn't go, God meant it that way. They said, no, God meant for me to be free. And if God meant for me to be free.
And we still not free.
Well, wait a minute. They fought.
And you are still now. Hold on. Let's back up because I don't want to miss the point. Let's back up.
right?
Let's back up. Let's not miss a point. You're a very intelligent man. Very intelligent man. But the truth of the matter is, even though the activity of voting should never be overlooked by black people, but your vote and my vote does not determine the outcome. You know that. You know the electoral college determines
Come
the
on now.
outcome. You know for yourself. We are activity wise, we're going out to cast our vote just to see if they even consider who would likely be it. But the real decision is made with the electoral college, not
But
with
who
black folk.
determines the electoral college,
Okay, but
though?
hold
Who
on,
determines
hold
the
on,
electoral
hold on.
college?
Hold on, guys. Hold
Hold
on a
on,
second.
hold on. Here's another point for you.
But you're making a
Three,
statement there, sir, that we got to say, when you talk about electoral college, how did Obama get elected then? The electoral
the
college.
same way that everybody else got to vote it.
So that's my point. So what are you
Listen,
saying?
listen.
So hold on a
The
second.
same way.
So I'm sorry, Bishop. Let's look at the time here. It's
Okay.
5:56. I got 4 minutes. I didn't want to get Dr. Dyson to no type of intellectual battle back and forth. You guys, that's that. I apologize. I'm getting rebuked over here
I
by
don't think it's a battle. I think it's
Sister
it's just a
Trudy.
conversation.
I think we all
And
have.
some people, yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
I
a
think
conversation.
we all have our opinions. That's why I started in the very beginning saying that if you have an opinion, you certainly can contact me. I apologize, Trudy. Don't fuss at me. I'm getting fussed at on the over here. I never wanted that to happen. One thing about the show, you guys already know, is that I do this show because I want to jog your mind. I want you to think. I want you to study. I want you to be all that you can be. And these conversations cause you to have to go and research the book, research the Bible, whatever you need to do to make sure that you stand strong in whatever your belief is. Everybody have their own belief in everything. Okay, so we can't.
Okay.
I'm not trying to say you're wrong, but I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. So
Absolutely.
everybody's watching. So I gotta go.
All
Dr.
right.
Dyson, thank you for your time. I
God bless.
appreciate you. How can people connect with you?
I'm on Instagram, which is Michael Eric Dyson. Facebook the same way, and then on X, or used to be Twitter, is Michael E. Dyson. So check me out, but hit me up on Instagram, send me a message, and I'll be sure to holler back.
Thank you,
I
Dr.
love you,
Dyson.
man.
Appreciate you,
Love
man.
y'all now. Appreciate y'all now.
Bless you.
Love
Continue
you.
to
All right,
do.
brother.
All right.
Bless
God
you.
bless you, sir.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. God bless
Okay.
you.
Peace to you.
All right.
So we got 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I didn't want that to go that way. I didn't want to.
I
I
don't
didn't.
think there was anything wrong with it. I think it was
It was a
stimulating
dialogue.
intellectual conversation. I think anybody
Yes.
that felt like it went the wrong way, something's wrong with them. Because
Yeah.
you cannot have stimulating conversation and put great minds together and they all
Mhm.
have the exact same opinion. Period.
Mhm.
And it's time out for black folk to think that everything is an argument. Some things
Mhm.
are just
That's
intense
true. That's true.
conversations
I
that
love it,
sound
Smith.
like an argument. They're not arguments. We're having an
Mhm.
intense conversation. 4 or 5 great minds who
Mhm.
are talking about the same thing,
Mhm.
just dealing in a different manner.
That's it.
His perspective
Yes.
was intellectual. My
Yes.
perspective was spiritual. Dr.
Supernatural.
Judas was
Yes.
spiritual. Bishop's was
Yeah.
spiritual. Yours was spiritual. So I don't think there was anything wrong with the conversation. And if somebody felt like
Right.
there was something wrong with the conversation, they need to revisit and look at
Mhm.
what we were saying, because I guarantee you, if a bunch of people heard it, there will be half that might have felt offended, but there will be
Mhm.
other portions that said, "Hey, that was
Mhm.
very good
That's right.
intellectual,
Well, we wanted to be
stimulating
intellectual. You know,
conversation."
my heart is always to make sure.
Nobody
Again,
was offended. I wasn't offended.
well, you weren't offended. I know you wasn't, and I don't know uh, what the. I just got a little rebuke from Miss Trudy, which I'll talk to her personally. But I don't want to. Again, I do this show so that I was brought up to think. You
Dr.
got to
Bishop
think,
Judas started.
and you got to think for yourself. You have your own opinion, but we had a discussion. It wasn't an
Yeah.
argument. So, Trudy, it wasn't an argument. We weren't trying to get him. I don't, he's my
No.
friend. I know him since I was a little boy, and we were not trying to cause any issues. So I'm apologize for that. People had questions online. We answered the question. There was some more things, discussion. I think Dr. Smith had his point. Dr. Judy had her point. Tico had his point. We all have our point. We all have opinion. I don't think anybody has a problem with lifestyle of being lesbian or gay. That's your lifestyle. We know the difference between
Right,
that
right.
lifestyle and between sin. And it's there should be, somebody said there should be something different between that sin and being black. You know, it's a lot of stuff. But everybody has that's why you have to think for yourself.
Yes, sir.
Come on
And that's
now.
why you have to study
Absolutely.
and know who
Absolutely.
you are.
Say that,
Because
Bishop. Say that.
otherwise you're making a
Say
mistake.
that.
You're
Yes,
gonna make
sir.
a mistake. So here's
Yes,
the two
sir.
books. I got 5 minutes. Actually, I got to 6:05. I got 5 minutes. But here's the two books. The first one is Represent, and the other one is Tears We Cannot Stop by Michael Eric Dyson. You can go to his, Google him. You'll be able to find his books. Great author, great man of God. Talking about a man of God that pulled himself up. He is doing what he's doing, and we go from there. So, all right, we got about 5 minutes. I asked for a 5 minutes extra time. Let's kind of, Bishop Judy, you want to say anything right quick? How should people?
Yes, I first of all, I think, I appreciate the guests you brought on. And I think
Absolutely.
all of us handle it with integrity, and we handle it according to what our beliefs was. We listened to his beliefs for about a half hour, and it demanded a response. And the word of God says that in Acts 19, they disputed and argued the truth. And this is what his form of serving his platform is that of tenacity and aggressiveness that comes forth in what he believes. We also have what we believe, and we have to be able to express that freely. Everyone can have an opinion, and I'm sure you're going to get. But Bishop Keith, you should really understand the fact that we back you up.
Oh no,
Okay.
I'm not worried about that. That's
Yeah,
not.
we
I'm not
we
worried about that
back
part.
you up.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is when people say they're offended by it, it's because they have something personally. All of us are public figures. And
Well, I
all
don't
of
think
us
he.
know,
I don't know if he had a problem with it because that's not the message. And I'm not sure how that. I just read the message. So, but I know that
right,
he's a person of. He has an opinion. He listened to other
Yeah.
opinion. He talked through it to get an
right.
understanding.
He wanted, because he was edging me to come on with it. And really, Dr. Smith, my back got my back, and he came on up with it. So, I rest in that. I appreciate this show. You got me. I love it.
So
I
in
love
the
it.
last question, Dr. Tico, you had anything else?
Other than, I love the political influence that Dr. Dyson has, but at the same time, as I said, I rest in my biblical morals. The Holy
Yes.
Spirit is my consciousness, and I will
Yes.
not detour that from anybody because that's
Yes.
inerrant no matter how you
Yes.
look at it. And so
Yeah.
I love all of y'all. Thank y'all so much for what we do here
Amen.
because I'm better for being a part of this show. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr.
Yeah.
Keith.
Thank you. No problem. We're
Yes.
not done. I got one last question that came up, and I couldn't get it while we were talking to him. How should people who are not spiritual or religious deal with Trump? If
Simple.
you're not spiritual or religious, how do you deal with Trump?
You
I,
listen, Dr. Smith
Get
answered
Jesus.
that in such, I was so proud of him. I wanted to jump up and run. Okay. Trump is not our problem. We have tried to make the whole Black community into this one voice that's got to hate people, got to destroy people. We're not looking biblically at what the Bible says. I'm getting ready to come over there and sit under his feet because this is exactly what we're talking about. And people who are teaching the word have an obligation to teach the truth.
Yes. Yes.
And we are not teaching the truth if we sit back. First of all, this was not about spiritual, this was about flesh and blood. Okay? And we need to understand that when we are public, we are going to encounter this. You know what this says to me? We growing. We growing.
I
And
think Bishop.
we don't have to follow in behind and give a opinion about Trump. He
No, it's
is
not.
biblically in the Bible.
Right. We don't
Yeah,
have to.
and here
People.
and Bishop, may I say real quickly,
Yes.
the you gotta. That's such a broad question. How are we handling Trump? First of all, you're not handling Trump. You're not
No.
close enough
Not
No.
doing
to
that.
handle Trump.
No.
You're not you whatever you say makes no impact. The best thing you can do now is stay focus on the word. Watch as well as
Well, as pray.
keep
Yes.
your mind on the eternal thing and
Yes,
understanding
Lord.
that this
Mhm.
world is about to end. If you are not preparing for the bride, if you're not preparing for him, you're
Mhm.
missing it. You're going to miss what this is all about. This world was never our home. We are
Mhm.
here on assignment by God to prove to
Yes.
the world system
Yes.
that we are his creation instead of wanting
Yes.
to be like the creature and not like the creator. You
Right.
Greater.
miss the whole
Yes.
point.
Right.
Keep your eyes on
Yes.
him. Prepare yourself to be a part of the great wedding that is about
Mhm.
to take place. Forget
So
about
that's
Mhm.
Trump.
you're
Trump
not
has a
right. So
job.
you're not as a non-believer. We are saying to you that you worried about the wrong thing.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You should
pretty
be
much.
worried
Yeah.
about your
Pretty
soul.
much.
You should be
Yes.
Yeah.
worried about your soul and where your soul will spend
Mhm.
eternity.
Yeah.
And that's what you should be concerned about. And even
Mhm.
of those of us that are believers, we're not worried about who's in the White
Mm-mm.
House. That's never been our
Mhm.
indication. We,
Never.
as
That's
the
it.
man of God started from the very beginning, he said, "Hey, listen, we've survived many things in the past. We can
Mhm.
survive a Trump
Mhm.
or whoever would have been in the White House if it
Right.
wasn't
Mhm.
Trump." So you worry about the wrong thing. We just got to get worry about your soul. That's worry about
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
That's
I
it.
That's
love it.
That's
Amen.
it.
that's what you
Soul
can
business.
control.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep.
So
That's it.
anybody else? 2 more minutes. I got 2 more minutes to go. Thank y'all again. I'm good. I don't believe Dr. Dyson was offended in any kind of way.
No, no, no. I
Um,
think he was
Mm.
enjoying it actually.
he's a
Really,
man of
he
he's a man.
was.
Yeah, I think
He's
he was
Yes.
enjoying it.
fine.
Yes.
He faces a lot more on
Oh
CNN.
yeah,
Trust
yeah.
me.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I've seen
Trust me.
him stand in front
Trust
of
me.
a group of pastors and really preach and really put it in. Well, first of
Mhm.
all, you got to remember those of you that's watching saying y'all putting political in with spiritual. That's what the church, the black church, has
Yeah.
always done. We've always been to stand in the pulpit and say, this is what you have to do as
Yeah.
believers and as people. Why now is it such a big situation? Why now we can't talk about it?
Hmm. And Doc, may I
Because
ask?
we don't listen, we don't understand that we are called to infiltrate.
Yeah.
We are
Doc,
called to
my
infiltrate.
my next book
Okay.
coming out is called Balance.
Oh yeah.
It's
Okay. That'll
about
work.
I'm writing about the balance between spirituality
Hmm.
and the world and how we can not longer be one-sided. We
That's right.
gotta understand the whole
Hmm.
picture. That's why Paul
Hmm.
told him, let me pray for your spirit,
Yeah.
your
Hmm.
body,
Yeah.
and your mind.
Hmm.
Yes.
We
Hmm.
can't afford to be one dimensional. God
Come
himself
on now.
is not
Come
one
on.
dimensional.
That's
But
it.
Wow.
when
Wow.
we're in a place of defending our faith
Hmm.
and talking about things from a spirit, somebody can talk about intellectual stuff and that's great,
Right.
but that's not my call.
That's
Right.
My
not my
call is to
call, son.
deal
That's
with
it.
things from a
Yeah.
spiritual perspective. Now if I got to
Yes.
get intellectual I can, but that's
Yes,
not
Yes.
my
sir.
call. I stay in my
That's
lane.
not it. That's
Right.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's why, Dr. Smith, I made that comment
Hmm.
Yes.
as a man of God. Let's make sure
Hmm.
that's
You
what
did.
I'm
You
talking
had it
about.
straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
But
made it
I love
straight.
it.
We understood exactly what you were saying. We
Hey,
understood
look,
exactly what you're saying,
look.
and
I know
you
what
know,
I am. I don't know what they look.
right.
Okay.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So we're
Yes.
Listen,
good.
every
Listen, we gotta go. Thank you, Penny, for the extra time.
Thank
And
All
everybody.
right.
Thank you, man.
I just
All
want to
love
say
righty.
to
y'all.
you
Love
that
y'all. Thank you.
before you
Love
go, hold
y'all.
on just a second. Before I go, before
Yeah.
you go, you gotta go off the right way. Don't just don't hang up. We still got people watching. I just want to say to those who's watching, I hope and pray that this show, as with our first show, this is the second show. I'm trying to get a great man of God with Bishop Tico Manuel's help to come and be with us on the 20th of February. Every show in this season is going to be
Mhm.
thought provoking. That's going to make you go back and pick up a book of some kind
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
Bible so that
Mhm.
you will know where you are and what you're supposed to do. It is
Mhm.
important that you have to understand who you are, whose you are, and you just not here by accident.
That's
So
right.
keep
Mhm.
That's
tuning
right.
in, keep
Amen.
watching, support Dr. Smith, gifted man of
Amen.
God, very knowledgeable. Bishop Judy is a wonderful orator, wonderful teacher. Bishop Tico Emanuel is the same. These men and women, God, take their time. They are available to you if you need them in any kind of way. Bishop Judy, how people connect with you?
Through Goshen PMP@gmail.com.
Okay.
Judy Anderson Ministries, Facebook, Bishop Judy Anderson.
And we're praying especially for Bishop Judy. I don't think she mind.
Oh yeah,
She is
definitely.
in the midst of doing something that all of us on this, all three of us guys watching have had to do. And I don't know of an antidote, but I do know one thing, that when a person leave here and they're in God, it's so much more, it's so much more easier because one day she'll see her mother again. We're praying your strength. Be
Absolutely.
Thank you.
encouraged.
Appreciate
Bishop Tico, how do people reach you?
www.macedoniamissionarybc.com. And you can also reach me on Facebook, Instagram, or X, Tico Lamonis Manuel. I love y'all.
All right.
All right.
Love
And
you
then
too,
Bishop
brother.
Smith, how can people reach you?
I'm easy, just drwillardsmith@gmail.com. DRWILLARDSMITH at Gmail. It'll put you right where I am.
All right. You can reach me, Dr. Keith Farmer, on all forms of social media. Any opinions, any thoughts, you can contact me. We'll reason together as we're supposed to do.
That's
Peace.
it.
God bless you. Until next time, we'll see you right here.
All right.
With the
God
Farmer
bless.
Report.
Bless you.
Thank you.